Picture this, it's 1929. A Turkish naval officer named Piri Reis is cataloguing old maps in the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace. Ancient parchments, forgotten sea charts, the accumulated cartographic knowledge of centuries. And then he finds something that shouldn't exist. A map, drawn in 1513, showing the coastline of Antarctica in remarkable detail. But here's what makes this truly impossible. The map shows Antarctica without ice. It depicts mountains, river valleys, coastlines carved by flowing water, geographic features that wouldn't be confirmed until 1949, when modern sonar technology finally penetrated miles of ice sheet. How did a 16th century Ottoman admiral create a map of a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years? And more disturbingly, how did he show it as it appeared thousands of years before it froze? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I made it. So go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I always read them. It's fascinating seeing people from Melbourne at breakfast and Manchester at midnight, all wondering about the same frozen mysteries. Tonight, we're going to explore the most forbidden continent on Earth, a land buried under ice so thick that it took humanity until the 20th century to even confirm what lay beneath. We're going to examine evidence that suggests Antarctica wasn't always frozen, that it was once home to forests, rivers, perhaps even civilizations. And we're going to ask the question that nobody wants to answer. What really lies beneath 2 miles of ice? There's something calming about Antarctica's mysteries. Unlike the chaos of daily life, these secrets have been frozen for thousands of years. They'll still be frozen tomorrow. There's no urgency, no deadline, just the quiet comfort of knowing that beneath all that ice, history is waiting, preserved, patient, eternal. So get comfortable, let these questions wash over you, and let's step together into the forbidden history of the world's most mysterious continent. The first thing you need to understand about Antarctica is that it wasn't always at the South Pole, not in the way we think of positions as fixed. The Earth's crust moves, continents drift, what we call continental drift or plate tectonics, and Antarctica has been on quite a journey. 600 million years ago, Antarctica was part of a supercontinent called Gondwana, along with South America, Africa, India, and Australia. And it wasn't at the pole, it was closer to the equator, warm, tropical even. We know this because we've found fossils, coal deposits formed from ancient forests, petrified wood from trees that grew in temperate climates, the bones of dinosaurs that couldn't have survived in ice. Around 180 million years ago, Gondwana began breaking apart. The continents slowly drifted to their current positions, and Antarctica drifted south toward the pole, toward the cold. By 34 million years ago, it had reached its current position, and that's when the ice began to form. At first, just small glaciers in the mountains, then ice sheets spreading across the highlands. Eventually, the entire continent became encased in ice. Today, that ice is on average 1 mile thick. In some places, it reaches nearly 3 miles deep. That's 14,000 feet of ice, pressing down with unimaginable weight, preserving everything beneath it like a frozen time capsule. But here's where it gets interesting. That ice hasn't always been there in its current extent. Ice core samples tell us the thickness has varied over millions of years. During ice ages, more ice. During warmer periods, less ice. And during some periods in Earth's history, periods that aren't as far back as you might think, Antarctica may have been significantly less frozen than it is today. The question is, how much less? And more importantly, when? Now let's return to that map. the Piri Reis map of 1513. When Admiral Piri Reis created his world map, he didn't claim to have discovered these lands himself. He was quite explicit about his sources. In notes written on the map itself, he states that he compiled it from about 20 older maps and charts, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, others even older. He mentions using maps from the Library of Alexandria, the ancient library that burned, the library that supposedly held the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world before it was destroyed. And if those source maps really existed, if they really came from ancient libraries and archives, then someone thousands of years ago mapped Antarctica's coastline. Someone saw it without ice. Someone charted those mountains and river valleys. Mainstream scholars are quick to dismiss this. They say the Piri Reis map is just a lucky coincidence, that what looks like Antarctica is actually a distorted view of South America's coast, that we're seeing patterns that aren't really there. And they might be right. Maps from that era are notoriously inaccurate. Coastlines are warped. Distances are wrong. It's easy to misinterpret what the mapmaker actually intended. But then in 1949, a Swedish-British expedition conducted the first comprehensive seismic survey of Antarctica. They used sound waves to penetrate the ice and map the actual bedrock beneath, the actual shape of the continent hidden under miles of frozen water. And when Professor Charles Hapgood, a historian from Keene State College, compared these modern surveys to the Piri Reis map in 1960, he found something disturbing. The correlation was remarkable. The Piri Reis map showed mountains in the interior of Antarctica. The seismic surveys found mountains. The map showed a bay on the eastern coast. The surveys found a bay hidden under ice. The map showed the landmass extending towards South America in a particular way. The actual bedrock does exactly that. Hapgood became convinced that the Piri Reis map and several other ancient maps showing similar features were copied from source maps created when Antarctica was at least partially ice-free. He even got Albert Einstein interested in the problem. Einstein wrote the foreword to Hapgood's book, Earth's Shifting Crust, though he was careful to note he couldn't verify the cartographic analysis himself. So we're left with a question. If the Piri Reis map really does show Antarctica without ice, when was it mapped? Antarctica began freezing over 34 million years ago, long before humans existed in any form we'd recognize. The ice has been building for millions of years, so how could anyone have mapped it ice-free? Unless, and this is where it gets controversial, unless Antarctica froze much more recently than we think, or unless it went through periods of warming where the ice retreated significantly, or unless something happened to cause rapid freezing of a previously temperate land. This brings us to one of the most disputed theories in alternative archaeology, the theory of crustal displacement. Charles Hapgood proposed that the Earth's outer crust could shift rapidly over the inner layers, like the peel of an orange sliding over the fruit beneath. He suggested that this crustal shift could move entire continents thousands of miles in a relatively short period, geologically speaking. And if such a shift occurred, a temperate Antarctica could slide to the South Pole and freeze quickly. Mainstream geologists reject this completely. They point out that plate tectonics explains continental movement perfectly well without needing sudden catastrophic shifts, that the energy required for rapid crustal displacement would be astronomical, that there's no mechanism that could cause it. And they're probably right. The evidence for slow, steady plate tectonics is overwhelming. But Hapgood wasn't entirely wrong about everything. We now know that the Earth's magnetic poles do shift. The magnetic North Pole wanders. It's currently moving from Canada towards Siberia at about 34 miles per year. and occasionally the magnetic poles flip completely. North becomes south, south becomes north. This has happened hundreds of times in Earth's history. Could a magnetic pole shift cause climate chaos? Could it trigger rapid climate change in specific regions? The evidence is unclear, but what we do know is that Earth's climate can change remarkably quickly under certain conditions. Ice core samples from Antarctica tell us something fascinating. The cores, drilled thousands of feet into the ice, contain layers like tree rings. Each layer represents a year of snowfall, compressed into ice. And by analyzing these layers, scientists can reconstruct past climates, temperature, atmospheric composition, even the types of vegetation that existed in surrounding areas preserved as pollen trapped in the ice. What these cores reveal is that Earth's climate is far less stable than we'd like to think. Temperature swings of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius have occurred within decades, not thousands of years. Decades. The transition from ice age to temperate climate, or vice versa, can happen in a single human lifetime. This brings us to the Younger Dryas event. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth was warming nicely after the last ice age. The glaciers were retreating, sea levels were rising, and then suddenly temperatures plummeted back to full glacial conditions. In the space of perhaps 50 years, maybe less, the climate collapsed. The Younger Dryas lasted for 1,300 years. Then, equally abruptly, it ended. Temperatures shot back up, the ice retreated again, and human civilization, which had been developing during the warming period, had to start over in many regions. What caused the Younger Dryas? Scientists debate this. Some think a massive meltwater pulse from glacial lakes disrupted ocean currents. Others propose a cosmic impact, a comet breaking up in the atmosphere. Still others suggest volcanic activity or changes in solar radiation. Whatever the cause, it proves that rapid, catastrophic climate change is not just possible, it's happened recently. And if it happened 12,800 years ago, could it have happened earlier? Could Antarctica have been temperate during an earlier warming period, been mapped by whatever humans existed then, and then plunged into deep freeze during a climate catastrophe? The timeline is tight. Modern humans have only existed in our current form for about 200,000 years. Antarctica started freezing 34 million years ago. That's a gap of 33.8 million years where no humans existed to map anything. Unless Antarctica wasn't fully frozen the whole time. Unless there were warming periods where the ice retreated significantly. And here's where the evidence gets interesting. In 2017, scientists discovered fossils of ancient rainforest in Antarctica. Not 100 million years ago, 90 million years ago, yes, when dinosaurs still existed. But the findings confirmed what we already suspected. At various points in Earth's history, Antarctica was warm, covered in vegetation, home to diverse ecosystems. But could it have been warm recently enough for humans to see it, for humans to map it? The conventional answer is no, absolutely not. Antarctica has been frozen solid for millions of years, long before humans evolved. But then we find things like the Piri Reis map. We find other ancient maps showing similar features. The Oronteus Phineus map of 1531, which also shows Antarctica without ice, with remarkable detail. The Philippe Boitch map of 1737, created from even older sources, showing Antarctica as two large islands separated by a channel. In 1958, during the International Geophysical Year, seismic surveys discovered something remarkable. Antarctica is indeed two large landmasses, East Antarctica and West Antarctica, separated by a channel that would be open water if the ice melted. Philippe Boitier's 1737 map, copied from older sources, somehow knew this. So we have ancient maps showing geographic details that shouldn't be known until modern times. We have evidence that Earth's climate can shift catastrophically fast. We have proof that civilizations existed during the last ice age, more sophisticated than we used to believe, and we have an entire continent buried under 2 miles of ice, unexplored, unmapped, holding secrets we can't access. What else is under that ice? In 2001, satellite imagery detected something unusual in East Antarctica. What appeared to be geometric patterns beneath the ice, straight lines, right angles, circular formations. The images were heavily analyzed. Some researchers claimed they showed evidence of structures, ruins of buildings or monuments buried and frozen. Mainstream scientists were skeptical, naturally. They suggested the patterns were natural geological formations. Ice flow can create surprisingly regular shapes. Volcanic features can look geometric. Without drilling down through miles of ice to physically examine the formations, there's no way to know for certain what they are. But the satellite anomalies keep appearing. Ground-penetrating radar surveys occasionally pick up unusual readings, formations that look too regular to be natural, but always deep beneath the ice, inaccessible, impossible to verify without massive excavation efforts that no one has funded. Then there are the reports, unverified and controversial, from Operation High Jump. In 1946 to 1947, the United States launched the largest Antarctic expedition in history. Operation High Jump, officially called the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program. Led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the expedition involved 4,700 men, 13 ships and 33 aircraft. The official purpose was to establish research bases, train personnel in polar conditions, and test equipment in extreme cold, standard scientific and military objectives. The operation was scheduled to last 8 months. It was abruptly terminated after just 8 weeks. When Admiral Byrd returned, he allegedly gave an interview to a Chilean newspaper, El Mercurio, in which he made strange statements. He reportedly said that the expedition had encountered a new threat that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds, that America needed to prepare defenses against aerial attack from the polar regions. Conspiracy theories exploded around Operation High Jump. Stories circulated about secret Nazi bases in Antarctica, advanced technology hidden under the ice, confrontations with unknown forces. Most of this can be dismissed as Cold War paranoia and sensationalism. The Chilean newspaper interview might be a fabrication or mistranslation. But the question remains: why was such a massive, well-funded expedition cut short? The official explanation is harsh weather and equipment failures, which is entirely plausible. Antarctica is one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Still, the mystery lingers, and it feeds into a larger narrative about Antarctica as a forbidden zone, a place where governments don't want people looking too closely. Under the Antarctic Treaty of 1961, Antarctica is designated as a scientific preserve. Military activity is banned, nuclear testing is prohibited, territorial claims are frozen in place. Any nation can conduct scientific research, but all findings must be shared openly. On the surface, this seems reasonable. Protect one of the last pristine environments on Earth for science and peaceful cooperation. But some researchers see it differently. They argue the treaty exists to control access, to prevent independent exploration, to keep certain discoveries secret. Why would governments want to hide anything in Antarctica? The theories vary. Some say there are ancient ruins that would rewrite human history. Others claim there are vast mineral deposits that nations want to exploit exclusively once the treaty expires. Still others propose more exotic possibilities involving technology or discoveries that would destabilize global politics. Most of this is speculation. But the fact remains that we know remarkably little about what's actually beneath Antarctica's ice. The continent is larger than Europe. It contains 70% of Earth's fresh water in frozen form, and we've barely scratched the surface with our surveys. Lake Vostok, discovered in the 1970s but not confirmed until the 1990s, is a subglacial lake buried under more than 2 miles of ice. It's one of the largest lakes on Earth. It's been sealed off from the surface for 15 to 25 million years. Its water has been isolated, undisturbed, possibly harboring unique ecosystems that evolved independently of the rest of Earth's biosphere. Russian researchers drilled down to Lake Vostok in 2012. They broke through the ice into the lake water, and then the information became sparse. Some reports claim they found unusual bacterial life. Others say the lake is sterile. The data remains incomplete and not fully shared with the international community. There are over 400 known subglacial lakes in Antarctica. Most have never been accessed. Many have probably never been detected. Each one is a sealed environment, potentially holding unique life forms, frozen records of ancient climates, or who knows what else. And beneath the ice, beneath the lakes, is the actual bedrock of Antarctica, the land surface, which we've mapped with sonar and radar but never directly observed in most places. What would we find if we could melt away all the ice just for a moment and look at Antarctica as it really is? Would we see nothing but natural rock formations and empty valleys? Or would we find something else? Ruins, structures, evidence of habitation, the remains of whatever civilization might have existed during a warmer period, or evidence of visitors from elsewhere. This is where the conversation usually goes off the rails into pure speculation. Ancient aliens, lost super civilizations, Atlantis relocated to Antarctica. Most of this is fantasy, wishful thinking, the desire for mystery to be more exciting than reality usually is. But strip away the nonsense and you're left with legitimate questions. We know Antarctica was temperate at various points in its history. We know humans have existed for 200,000 years and various human species for even longer. We know that during the last ice age, sea levels were 400 feet lower, exposing vast areas of land that are now underwater. We know that sophisticated hunter-gatherer societies existed 12,000 to 15,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 11,600 years ago, proves that pre-agricultural societies could create monumental architecture. The massive stone pillars, some weighing 20 tons, arranged in circular enclosures and covered with intricate carvings. Built by people who supposedly had no written language, no wheels, no metal tools. Just stone and determination and knowledge we're only beginning to understand. So is it really impossible that some ancient people, during a warming period, reached Antarctica? That they mapped what they found? That this knowledge was preserved in old maps, copied and recopied through the centuries until fragments ended up in Admiral Piri Reis's hands? The conventional archaeological timeline says this is impossible. And maybe it is. Maybe the Piri Reis map is just a fortunate coincidence. Maybe all the ancient maps are misinterpreted. Maybe Antarctica has been fully frozen, completely inaccessible for millions of years. But the evidence keeps nagging. The maps, the climate data showing rapid change is possible. the existence of sophisticated ancient societies, the vast unexplored regions beneath the ice. And perhaps most intriguingly, the stories. Ancient cultures around the world have flood myths. Nearly every civilization has stories of a great deluge that destroyed the world. Noah's flood in the Bible, the Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia, Hindu texts describing Manu and the Great Flood, Greek myths about Deucalion and Pyrrha surviving the deluge sent by Zeus, Aztec stories of world-destroying floods, Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime stories about the waters rising and drowning the land. Conventional scholars explain these as cultural memories of local flooding events, river floods, tsunamis, storm surges. Each culture experienced flooding, created myths to explain it. The similarities are just because flooding is a universal human experience. But some researchers propose a different explanation. What if these myths remember a real global catastrophe? The end of the last ice age, when glaciers melted, when sea levels rose 400 feet, when coastlines where humans lived for thousands of years vanished beneath the waves. That wasn't a flood that lasted 40 days and nights. It was a sea level rise that took thousands of years. But from the perspective of people living on the coast, generation after generation, watching the water creep higher, watching their settlements slowly submerge, watching their ancestors' lands disappear beneath the ocean, it would feel like the world was drowning. And if that's what the flood myths remember, if they're cultural memories of real climate catastrophe at the end of the Ice Age, what else might ancient stories preserve? Some cultures speak of lands that vanished. Atlantis, obviously, Plato's account of an advanced civilization destroyed in a day and night of earthquakes and floods. Lemuria and Mu, theoretical lost continents in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. The Tamil legends of Kumari Kandam, a land south of India that was swallowed by the sea. Ancient Egyptian texts mentioning lands to the south that no longer exist. Most of these are dismissed as pure mythology, and most probably are. But what if some preserve memories of real places? Not advanced super civilizations with lasers and flying machines, just normal human settlements on land that's now underwater or under ice. 400 feet of sea level rise covers a lot of territory, and humans preferentially settled on coasts. Easy food from the ocean, moderate climates, access to fresh water, and trade routes. If sophisticated human societies existed 15,000 years ago, and they probably did, they would have been concentrated on coastlines that provided the richest resources and easiest travel. Coastlines that are now 400 feet underwater, buried beneath centuries of sediment, lost to history unless we specifically go looking for them with advanced underwater archaeology. We've barely explored the continental shelves, the shallow underwater areas around current continents that were dry land during the Ice Age. Some underwater archaeology has been done. Ancient settlements have been found off the coast of India, submerged ruins that date back thousands of years, submerged structures in the Mediterranean that nobody expected, evidence of human activity now beneath the waves preserved by the cold, dark water. But it's expensive, difficult. Underwater excavation is incredibly slow and technically challenging, and most of the world's continental shelves remain unexplored. We have better maps of Mars than we do of our own ocean floor. How many settlements are down there? How many ancient cities built on river deltas that are now submarine canyons? How much human history was lost when the seas rose? How many achievements were erased? How many discoveries were forgotten? And if rising seas destroyed settlements around the world, If they wiped out evidence of human achievement in every coastal region on Earth, couldn't the same thing have happened in Antarctica, but in reverse, not drowning by water, burying by ice? Imagine a coastal settlement in Antarctica during a warm period, let's say 15,000 years ago during a brief warming spell between glacial periods. Not a technologically advanced civilization with computers and spacecraft, just a normal human community adapting to their environment. They fish the rich Antarctic waters. They hunt seals and seabirds. They gather shellfish and seaweed. They build shelters from stone and driftwood and animal skins. They develop tools specialized for their environment. They create art depicting the animals they see. They map their coastline, marking good fishing spots and safe harbors and dangerous currents. They pass down knowledge through generations, teaching their children the stories and skills needed to survive. Then the climate shifts, maybe gradually over centuries, maybe suddenly within a generation. The temperature drops, snow falls in summer and doesn't completely melt. Each year, a little more snow accumulates, glaciers form in the mountains and start expanding down into the valleys. The growing season gets shorter, the fish migrate to warmer waters, the hunting gets harder. Year after year, the ice grows. The settlement becomes untenable. The people have to make a choice: stay and die, or abandon everything and move north to warmer land. So they leave, taking what they can carry, including their maps, their knowledge, their stories. Some of them might make it to South America, some to New Zealand or Australia. They integrate with other populations, they share their knowledge, the maps get copied, the stories get passed down, but over thousands of years, the context is lost. Later generations remember that there was land to the south, but not exactly where or what it looked like. The maps remain, mysterious documents showing a place nobody can find anymore. Back in Antarctica, the ice continues to grow. Over centuries, it spreads across the valleys and plains. Over millennia, it builds into massive sheets miles thick. The settlement, the fishing camps, the stone shelters, all slowly buried under accumulating snow that compresses into ice. The evidence of human presence sealed away, preserved perfectly in the freezing cold, waiting beneath the ice. That's not science fiction. That's entirely plausible, given what we know about climate change and human adaptability and the patterns of ice age cycles. The only question is timing. Did it happen during a period when humans were around to witness it, when humans had reached that far south? And we don't know, because we can't see beneath the ice, because we haven't looked. Which brings us back to where we started, to maps that shouldn't exist, to knowledge that seems impossible, to a frozen continent holding secrets we can't access without massive effort and expense. Maybe there's nothing under that ice except rock and snow and volcanic features. Maybe all the mysteries have mundane explanations. Maybe we're seeing patterns that aren't there, finding meaning in coincidences, letting our imaginations run wild in the absence of hard data. Or maybe, just maybe, Antarctica has stories to tell. Stories frozen in time. Stories about what really happened at the end of the last ice age, about how much humans knew, about how far humans traveled, about what was lost when the climate changed and the ice took over and the sea levels rose and whole chapters of human history got erased. We won't know until we look. And right now, we're barely looking. The handful of research stations scattered across Antarctica, they're focused on current climate science, studying ice cores and weather patterns and marine biology. They're not excavating for ancient ruins. They're not drilling down through miles of ice to see what might be preserved at the bedrock level. The ice is melting, slowly, due to climate change. In a few decades or centuries, parts of Antarctica might be accessible that haven't been seen in thousands or millions of years. And when that happens, when we can finally examine the land beneath the ice without drilling through miles of frozen water, we might find answers. Or we might find more questions, probably more questions. That's usually how archaeology works. For now, Antarctica remains the forbidden continent, the frozen mystery, the place where history might be buried, waiting for discovery, the last blank space on the map where anything might be hidden. And that's okay, because some mysteries are worth preserving, some questions are worth sitting with. Not everything needs to be answered immediately, solved definitively, reduced to certain knowledge. There's value in wonder, there's beauty in mystery. The ice has been there for thousands of years, it'll be there tomorrow. And so will the questions, the maps that don't make sense, the stories that might be memories, the evidence we can't quite explain. So as you drift off, think about those ancient maps. Think about coastlines drawn by unknown hands. Think about the possibility that beneath the ice, beneath 2 miles of frozen water, there might be evidence of us, of humans who lived and struggled and achieved things we've forgotten, who saw things we can't see anymore, who knew things we've had to rediscover. Think about the fact that we've only scratched the surface of our own history, that there are blank spots on the map of time, lost periods where we don't know what happened, forgotten peoples whose names we'll never learn, mysteries sealed in ice and buried under oceans and hidden in jungles we haven't explored, and lost in deserts that used to be fertile lands. And find comfort in that mystery, because it means the story isn't over. It means there are still discoveries to be made, still questions to answer, still wonders waiting to be found, still secrets preserved in the cold places and the dark places and the forgotten places of Earth. History isn't a closed book gathering dust on a shelf. It's an ongoing investigation, an active excavation, a puzzle with pieces still missing. And Antarctica, frozen and forbidden and barely explored, is one of the most intriguing chapters, one of the biggest mysteries, one of the last places where we might find something that completely changes our understanding of human history. Sleep well, dream of ice, and ancient maps and civilizations lost to time. Dream of secrets preserved in the cold, dream of coastlines that used to exist, and settlements that might be waiting. Dream of the day when we finally learn what really lies beneath Antarctica's frozen surface. What treasures or truths or ordinary human remains might be there. And tomorrow, the mystery will still be there. The ice will still be there. The questions will still be there. Waiting, patient, eternal, frozen in time like everything else in Antarctica. The maps will still exist, mysterious and controversial. The theories will still circulate, debated by scholars and enthusiasts. The evidence will still be ambiguous, tantalizing, insufficient to prove anything definitively, but too interesting to completely dismiss. And that's exactly as it should be, because mystery is what makes us human. Curiosity is what drives us forward. The desire to know what happened, what's hidden, what's possible, that's what separates us from other animals. That's what made our ancestors cross oceans and climb mountains and eventually figure out how to map an entire planet. So rest now. Let these thoughts drift through your mind like snow falling on ice, accumulating slowly, pressing down gently, creating layers of wonder and question and possibility. The forbidden continent isn't going anywhere. The ice will keep its secrets a while longer, and we'll keep wondering, keep questioning, keep imagining what might be down there in the cold and dark. Good night. Now let the sounds wash over you. Let your mind quiet. Let the questions fade into the background. Let sleep come naturally, gradually, like ice forming on a lake. The story is finished for tonight. The mysteries remain. And that's exactly as it should be. Rest now. Tomorrow is another day for wondering. For now, just drift. Just float. Just let go.